So, where to start with today's social justice idiocy? How about male privilege? A person on Facebook posted, "Do you know what male privilege is? That you can be queer as a $3 bill, but still the presence of your maleness on the street is getting women to speed walk and constantly look behind her and then getting her keys out. Like, I may have been having a conversation about boys and drag queens with another boy on the phone, but that doesn't mean women suddenly feel safe because there's a gay man on the sidewalk. There is a man walking on the street regardless of orientation. There is a man walking on the street, and the systems we have built and the messages we have spread create and perpetuate fear regardless of orientation. Besides, I have known, and still do, gay men who've harassed women on the street. You are just as guilty as your hetero counterparts, and you still benefit from male privilege." I think now we can just safely say that male privilege is synonymous with being male. It is something that you are born with. I don't know if we'd established this before, but this proves it beyond a reasonable doubt. Basically, if you are male, please just stay inside, because the mere sight of you on the street intimidates people. It's interesting because I've sort of noticed the same thing myself. Women that I've known around me can sort of yell and basically get very angry all they want, and nobody really raises an eyebrow. But the minute you sort of raise your voice or anything, you are considered violent, and people will try to, they'll shut you up. No, you can't say that. And just be quiet. Pipe down, man. You're being violent again. And it sort of forks into the whole bit that I covered maybe a month ago now, where basically a man broke down and started crying over the phone to a woman, and she felt threatened by this and basically treated the man like a rapist afterwards. And she was the one who was traumatized by it, regardless of the fact that she had triggered thoughts or memories of a past relationship in this guy that caused him to break down and cry to her on the phone. Yeah, he called her some names after she hung up on him because she was feeling unsafe. And this forks right into that, I think. Or basically, just being a man is threatening, regardless of your actual who you are as a person. Just because you're a man, you threaten them. If you raise your voice, you're threatening. You stand there on the street, you're threatening. Continuing on, we have our next case being you're racist for not caring about skin color. Who knew? Batched wrote, "I literally do not care about your gender, sexuality, or skin color. I literally only care about whether you're a nice fucking human being or not." To which the rogue feminist replies, "So basically you're racist, sexist, and homophobic." To which Dre, let's just call this person Dre, says, "How exactly could you have come remotely close to that conclusion?" Well, it's really quite simple, because now if we don't segregate people, we are actually racist. We need to treat people like they are inferior. Some of them are inferior. They all have special needs, see? If you are a black person, we're just going to accept that you're violent, you're going to destroy things. We just have to accept that that's who you are. That you are not incapable, you are incapable of higher thought processes. How is this not insulting to anyone? If you're a woman, they think you're incapable of taking care of yourself. You have no agency. And they don't see this as sexist. They see you treating them as a capable person with your very own agency. That is being a bigot. That is being a sexist, a racist, or a homophobe. So it finally made its way into my school. Here we have, now this is not my school, this is merely a picture I found on Imager. It's basically a couple of papers on a bulletin board or a pin board, whatever the hell you call these things. It's It reads as follows: instead of publicly shaming girls for wearing weather-appropriate clothing, teach male students and teachers not to over-sexualize the normal human anatomy. Girls shouldn't be embarrassed for wearing weather-appropriate, in caps, clothes. If my shorts or tops make you uncomfortable, you are the problem. Dress codes promote rape culture and sexism towards women. Now, I disagree. Dress codes in general they allow you to come together. They create a sense of togetherness or a sense of identity. And also, it's easier to spot your compatriots in a more diverse setting. For example, if you have soldiers out in the battlefield, the reason they don't all dress in different uniforms is, for one reason, you can tell them apart, and the second reason is that you basically are part of a larger group. You have less individual identity, and therefore the cohesion between the people in that group is looked at. You are in this together, see? It's sort of the whole bit about the sense of a nation, nationality, national pride. If you have people who aren't part of that national pride, it's divisive. So having a dress code actually creates an atmosphere where people are more likely to see themselves as sharing in similar goals and more willing to overlook very superficial, because how you dress is a superficial aspect to your identity. I don't think it exclusively promotes rape culture, but a feminist would say that. And another interesting thing is, who determines what is weather appropriate? I have always been a proponent of long-sleeved clothing. I get sunburnt easily, and I tend to wear long-sleeve shirts in the summer. And yeah, I live in the northern hemisphere, but it does get hot up here. But to me, that's weather appropriate. So what is weather appropriate to some people is not going to be weather appropriate to other people. If you look in Saudi Arabia, or a country under Sharia law where you have women in the hijab, they live in a very hot climate, and that clothing is considered weather appropriate. So obviously the term weather appropriate is open to interpretation to an extent, isn't it? So if my shorts or tops are making you uncomfortable, you are the problem. Suppose men took that position, right? We'd be called a rape apologists and stuff. But let's say I'm wearing tight pants or something, anything that sort of accentuates my sexuality the way these women do, or these girls do. I am basically flaunting that. And a lot of people would be uncomfortable with that. I guarantee you. There would not be a whole lot of people who want to see your junk bulging out, basically. So, according to this, the person who feels uncomfortable is the problem. And I find that very ironic, because in social justice circles, nobody should feel uncomfortable, right? I think these women should put a trigger warning on their clothing, because it might cause people to feel uncomfortable. That would be the true solution, the true social justice approved solution to this epidemic. This is a little piece. Everybody is familiar by now with why we need feminism. But here's another person saying this is why I need feminism. Today I was alone in the hall outside the art room, presumably at a school, an institute, a place of higher education and learning. I had come to search the table outside it for my artwork in the Fine Arts Festival. It was 3 minutes until the final bell rang, and some boys were leaving class early through the hall. They started shouting at me. "Hey, look at me. Look at me when I talk to you. What's your name? Look at me. Come here, hey." They all shouted. I ignored them. I was looking for my art and was used to it. Then I imagine this person, well, she meant then a large guy runs up and slams me into the desk at full force. My head hits the wall. He elbowed my in the ribs to force into the table, hurting my ribs, hips, and stomach too. Because I ignored them. I was in school. I started to cry. I was so hurt and angry, upset. Some girls ran up to me and comforted me. I was assaulted because I ignored a boy. That is why I need feminism. Because everybody knows feminism is sort of like a shield. You can hold it up. You say, feminism, and then nobody touches you, right? No, it's bullshit. It's just as bullshitty as the whole, the Christianity. You've seen this meme. The Pope is in the Pope-mobile. Bullets are real. Your faith is not. This is just as bullshitty as that is. Feminism is not going to stop people from assaulting you. Yes, I get what you're saying here, that if you turned men into creatures that were inherently weaker than women, you'd be less likely to get hurt by them. But that's not what feminism is going to do. If anything, it just creates more hostility towards the people who are trying to change who you are, because they consider it inferior. But what is really interesting about this is the outcry against chivalry, where men basically are putting their lives on the line, putting their own self-interests behind that of the women in their life. That whole notion of chivalry, what it was to be a knight, for example, in the medieval ages, where women were always treated with more respect than a man was. So you're saying that feminism is going to solve this, but chivalry wouldn't. I'm surprised that if a guy assaulted a woman, that the rest of the guys in the school are going to do nothing. There is something about seeing anybody, it doesn't necessarily have to be a woman, but it usually happens more to anybody who is weaker, being picked on or just bullied by somebody who's stronger. That appeals to most people on an emotional level, let's say. And they root for the underdog. So I'm incredulous that none of them would bother to help her. But I suppose she was probably just a bitchy feminist, and that's why everybody just hates her. And even then, how do we know that these guys slammed into her because she was a girl, or because I'm a little bit in disbelief that this could actually go on and no charges were filed or anything, given the current state of things. But if it was, it is the current system, you have to understand, that is being run by feminists, basically, that this is happening under. It is sort of like where sort of the far left is always complaining about the situation in inner cities, and yet the far left are the ones who've been running the inner cities for the last couple of decades, if not more. It is the society that they've created. It's their ideal society, and it still isn't right. Their utopia has fallen apart. It's a dystopia. So the next, this is an Instagram picture with with a woman wearing a hashtag Meninist shirt. For those who aren't aware of what Meninist is, it is basically a joke counter movement, probably started on Twitter, to the whole feminist thing. So this Instagram SJW writes, "What a fucking idiot. Any woman that is a Meninist is just stupid. I can't understand why a woman would even want to be a Meninist. It doesn't make any sense. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. You're basically saying fuck women's right by being a female Meninist. This girl is clearly dumb." Now let's interchange Meninist with feminist and woman girl with man boy. What a fucking idiot. Any man that is a feminist is just stupid. I can't understand why a man would even want to be a feminist. It doesn't make any sense. You're basically saying fuck men's rights by being a male feminist. This boy is clearly dumb. It just gives you some perspective on the double standard of it. That you think that anybody who would be possibly interested, and even though this is a joke, but let's just say it was the MRA, or for example. You're just saying that anybody who is even interested in men having rights is a fucking idiot. We should only be interested in women's rights. Because, honestly, fuck men's rights. They shouldn't have any. Nobody should advocate for them at all. Because the patriarchy is doing such a great job of it. The school system today. Obviously, because if you rape someone, you only get a warning. Not charged and thrown in jail and having your entire life ruined. Anyway, blotted out, so-and-so on Tumblr says, earlier this month, a guy at my school got caught with weed and was expelled. A week ago, a guy raped a girl during school hours on school property, and all he got was a warning. To which another SJW says, this needs more awareness. And the third SJW chimes in and says, this happened at my school too. My principal spent 2 hours trying to convince me to tell the cops it was my friend, the victim's fault. You know, I'm just going to have to call bullshit on this because it is clearly against the law, and there is nothing that, under the current administration, there is no, it's not even a patriarchy. In no sense of the word, it is closer to a matriarchy nowadays. The government system, especially the educational system, is closer to a matriarchy, with predominantly female teachers in the schools, in administrative positions. We are closer to a matriarchy than a fucking patriarchy. And, yeah. Okay, so, maybe what happened here, if this isn't complete and utter bullshit, is that, in typical SJW fashion, a girl lodged a complaint, or made an allegation against some guy, and they said, I'm sorry, we're going to need a little bit more proof, and maybe they said, hey, you know what, this person's a little psycho, and they have sort of lodged a complaint against you, maybe you should stay away from her. And that was the warning that he got. I don't know. I at this point, I can't even. So now, trigger warnings are triggering. So, a person on Facebook says, noticed y'all said, quote-unquote, content warning instead of trigger warning. Y'all are always on top of the ethical rhetoric, so I thought I'd ask, is there a particular reason for the replacement? To which Everyday Feminism, verified, replies, yes, thank you for asking. A reader suggested the change in consideration of people who have trauma around gun violence. To which the OP responds, thanks, I'd never thought of that. And another feminist probably chimes in and says, my brother committed suicide by a gun in '07, so I appreciate the change in wording. I wish people would be as considerate. People still hold their fingers up in the gun position and shoot their head while being dramatic about stress in life, but they don't understand that it is an instant reminder for me. Because apparently her brother shooting himself impacted her life more than it actually impacted his life. That callous patriarchal shitlord doesn't he think of the women in his life before taking it, how it would affect them? I mean, she probably needed him to move a fucking sofa or something the next day. The trauma. But this sort of gets back to the point where kids in school can't point. You can't do the finger gun, say bang, because that means that that's a likely indicator that you'll show up at school the next day with an AK-47 and just shoot up the place. So in some ways that's not surprising at all, and I'm surprised they haven't done it a little bit sooner, in fact. So now we get to the crux of the matter. Don't support breast cancer if you're a man who finds breasts attractive. As a small side note from reading this article, the article linked is from everydayfeminism.com. If I hear you say, quote, save the tatas or save second base as though breasts are the only reason to save someone, I'll probably deck you in the throat. So here we have another feminist threatening physical violence against a person for what I take it is expressing or using their First Amendment right to free speech. Now, what is interesting about it, why only a man? Don't lesbians find breasts attractive? How come they are allowed to support breast cancer when they find the mammary glands sexually attractive themselves? just because they're a woman. I mean, that reeks of some serious sexism right there, doesn't it? But of course, look who we are talking about. And finally, we have a meme here. Feminism is about equality between men and women. Feminism is not about men. It's not about men, it's about women. Visit us at LGBTfeed.com. Now, I thought the LGBT community was a community for lesbians, gays, bis, and trans, of which there are men, biological men in that community. You can be a bi man, you can be a gay man, for example. You can even be a trans man. So the fact that even the LGBT community basically doesn't give two shits about men is telling in and of itself. And it's sort of why I could never get behind such a movement. While I support things like, I don't see any reason not to legalize gay marriage, or at least grant the same benefits that they do to heterosexual couples. You just can't get behind a radical movement like the LGBT community, because they're more feminist than they care about. They care more about women than they actually do about the LGBT portion of the word. So thank you very much for listening, and I apologize for not producing anything last week, but I had to move to a different computer and get that all set up. So thank you for listening, and until next time, farewell.